Hello, my good friends. Welcome to the season finale of Ink Spills. YouTube channels don't usually have seasons, but I made a decision when I started Ink Spills that I was going to treat the first year as sort of an opportunity to discover my video voice and what kind of videos I really enjoyed making. I had actually originally envisioned this channel to be mostly an interview channel with some video essays, and I was surprised by how quickly that kind of just veered into vlogs. I found that doing vlogs kept me on track with a lot of my projects, which is probably why they are so common, because seeing other people do their projects is inspiring, so everyone watches them, and then also doing a vlog for a project just keeps you on track. But since I started this channel with editing heart splatters for my Patreon and really focusing on how to find time to write, I'm going to end this year, this first year of my channel, with polishing up heart splatters one final time before releasing it as a book. And I'm going to focus not so much on finding time to write, but on preserving the creative energy needed to write, which is a little bit of an overlap sometimes, but it's not exactly the same thing. Definitely one of the things that does overlap with what I talked about in my first video is having a physical job. When I worked a 9 to 5 office job, when I got home, I had such eye strain. I was like antsy, or I just felt like I needed to get up and move. And so sitting down to write after an 8-hour shift at a computer was just really hard to do. So working as pet sitter really preserves my creative energy so that I can use that mental concentration for my writing. I've already got my exercise in for the day. When I come home, I've already been out and about moving around, and so I'm ready to just settle down and sit down and do a couple hours of reading or writing. And another way that that working as a pet sitter also helps is that I am able to monitor my own bandwidth, because bandwidth fluctuates. And as long as I'm able to keep a finger on the pulse of my own bandwidth, I am able to keep just enough energy left to work on some writing projects as well. So like I have like a point system of like how many spoons will say like each different tasks take, and how many spoons I have like as a budget like per week, and then I can look at all of the things I have scheduled before I commit to doing something new. And that keeps me from ever, or not from ever, but it can help mitigate me reaching burnout, which is a serious issue for me specifically, that I'll work myself and work myself and work myself until I am just flat out can't do anything anymore, and I'm laying in bed for 3 days, and then I get pick myself back up and start the whole process over again. So I have a little bit of a system to try and keep myself paced where I am performing optimally continuously and never quite reaching that just I am all used up phase. Some other things that I do that kind of to replenish my energy on a regular basis is yoga, which I know everyone always hears everyone say that you're supposed to do yoga. You're not supposed to do yoga, but it is something that works really well for me specifically. It helps me get into a meditation state. The stretches physically tell your body to relax. So if I'm doing it on a regular basis, I am less anxious, less tense. And sometimes it just gives me a reason to stop working because I have a class and I have to go to class and it's scheduled. And then I'm able to like put the work away for a little bit. But like it doesn't have to be yoga for you. It could be any kind of like something that lifts you up. Some other things that I'll do that I try to work into my schedule on a regular basis, so I'm doing it all the time, not just as a recovery after I've reached burnout, but sort of more of a preventative to keep myself from hitting burnout is hot baths, picnics with a book, time with my dog, um, snuggles on the couch, watching shows with my partner. All those little things that sometimes when we are people with a lot of goals and who have a high, heavy work ethic and want to work really hard, we'll forget to do if we don't remind ourselves. So I have all of those things in my calendar as a reminder, including like having a nice snack or a glass of wine or a cup of tea. Because if you're not doing little things for yourself on a regular basis to mitigate stress and anxiety and all of the tasks that we need to get done, it's really easy to hit that burnout state and just kind of crash. And even though writing can be one of those things that keeps me stimulated, energized in general for my life, there's a point of being too tired to write. So I've learned that there has to be a point where I say that's enough, I can't do anymore, and there has to be a point where I'm like, okay, I'm putting everything aside and doing something for me. It can be hard. Why is relaxing hard? So for step one in getting heart splatters all polished up, I just got feedback from all my betas, and I'm like have all these ideas, and I'm excited about like how am I gonna like polish it up and work on all these pain points that my betas pointed out to me. But first things first is I am going to read through Snow Roses. I haven't read it for 6 years since I published Nightbriars, but I want to go through it just to make sure there aren't any incongruencies that I've forgotten about. I know the book pretty well, but you know there are always those little details that you forget after some time because it's been 10, 12 years since I wrote the book. So I will get started on that and check in with you later. So I just finished reading Snow Roses, and it's good. I shouldn't be surprised by that, but it's just been such a part of me, and seeing it with more distance, like after a long time after I've written it, and you know, like from the perspective of a reader, yeah, yeah, it's good. I would read that even if I hadn't written it. And also, reading it just made me feel really nostalgic for the time that I wrote it. I wrote it right after I got out of college. I spent 6 years in college, in a junior college, because I was paying for my own classes and I only worked part time. And so it took a long time for me to be able to pay for all the classes I needed to graduate. We had a Starbucks across the street, so I would walk over there in the morning, and I couldn't necessarily afford coffee, so I would just sit on the patio and work on my book. Mornings I would go to Starbucks and write for like 4 hours or so. But some other times, like at night, I would go upstairs and I would turn all the lights off and just like write by candlelight. And it felt very atmospheric and very much like I was immersed in the experience of writing. And I would, you know, listen. I had my soundtrack playlist that I use as my outline, and I would just, when I was jumping into the next chapter, I would listen to the song on repeat a couple times. There was a song that matched that chapter, and then I would just jump into it. And it really helped me be in the mood. I want to figure out ways to replicate that protected space and that continuous being immersed in this fictive dream if I were able to only do projects in between, or even probably reading books in between drafts. I think might be something to start doing looking forward, so I can sort of create those optimal circumstances in which this book that I'm very proud of was able to come out of. So my next step in getting heart splatters ready is I'm not sure if I should read the manuscript next while Snow Rose is still so fresh on my mind, or if I should read Toads and Diamonds, which is a fairy tale book that uh, Heart Splatters is the beginning of it is loosely based off of. It's a story about two sisters, and one gets blessed with diamonds falling from their mouth, and the other gets cursed with toads and snakes falling from their mouth. And it's very much your moralizing for young girls story of its time in which like, this is the right way to be a woman, this is the wrong way to be a woman. So I've twisted it around a little bit in my version. Heart Splatters is very much the story of Lucille and her sister and kind of the different paths they choose to take. I think I'm going to go ahead and read the manuscript while Snow Roses is still so fresh on my brain. And then it's going to be really hard because I'm going to be I already have all these ideas of things I want to add and fix and tweak based on my feedback. But I have to read it through first. I have to see if I agree with the feedback from a more objective standpoint of actually looking at the manuscript because I haven't read it in a year, not all the way through. Then, before I can fix anything, after I finish reading it, then I'll read the Toads and Diamonds and maybe the Snow Queen because I also interwove some elements of that fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. I'll read through the manuscript and then I will read the fairy tales it's based off of, and then I can finally get into like actually writing and actually polishing. It's all writing, but I want to get my head in the right space for it and make sure I'm focusing on the things that are going to make the story better. I am excited. I do like the little novella. It is unfortunately very dark. It's a villain origin story, so it does not have a happy ending. I'll launch into the next step of the process and check back in again soon. So I finished reading the manuscript. Took me 2 or 3 days just because I had so many other things going on. But this morning, actually, absolutely perfect morning because it's Comic-Con this weekend in San Diego. So when I drove my partner to work, he works downtown, I went and parked my car in his parking spot he has down there. And then I just walked around. That's why I'm all dressed up. But yeah, I walked around and I had some coffee and I sat down and finished reading the manuscript. And then, since we're not going inside the convention center this year, I walked around the corner to a comic book shop. It was only like 15-20 minute walk from where my partner works. And I picked up volume 4 of Monstrous, which is, full disclosure, the only comic that I have read, but I am loving it. I picked up volume 1 at Comic-Con a couple years ago when my partner took me for the first time. So I was like, well, since I'm here, I should check out a comic. And this one seemed the most interesting. I love it so much. But like, look at that gorgeous artwork. It's so intricate, and the story is dark. There's such deep world building, such deep characters. And I love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm excited to read that. Yeah, I'm glad I was able to get my Monstrous fix for Comic-Con, even though I'm not going inside the convention center this year. This is not a Comic-Con vlog. I just thought I'd say that since, you know, I probably won't have a Comic-Con vlog, and I still wanted to share how much fun I had this morning. It's like coffee, writing, a little bit of exploration downtown, a new book. That is the definition of a perfect morning. But writing, yes. Heart Splatters manuscript. What did I discover? So I think a lot of the feedback that I did get from my beta is very much on point, as far as making the character more, just explaining the character a little bit better, and just establishing some facts earlier on, and kind of giving it a more smooth reading experience, I suppose. But I also noticed that I used a lot of passive voice, and that was intentional. I had this envisionment of wanting it to feel like an old book. A lot of books written in like the 1800s and even the early 1900s, they use a lot of passive voice, and I thought maybe that would make it feel like old-fashioned Gothic. And like, since this was the villain, maybe her voice could be a little more detached than Snow and Rose's voices are. But I didn't feel, especially reading it right after Snow Roses, it felt like it was alienating the reader too much, so that you weren't really able to be involved in the story as much, especially since this protagonist is already someone you're going to feel a little bit detached from, because she does things differently than most of us would choose to do them. There's a lot of telling, not showing. And I know that's kind of like an eye roll, like, feedback, because like everyone says show don't tell, and sometimes it is okay to tell, but I think I did overdo the telling. I fortunately did not have too many walks today, so that that was why I was able to hang out downtown a little bit this morning. And we're gonna go back down there. We have dinner plans and some other stuff that we want to do downtown later. I'm not looking at the camera. I need to look at the camera while I talk. I'm excited. I had coffee this morning. I've been trying to not have too much coffee, but I had coffee this morning, and I was downtown doing all the things I love. So I'm happy and excited. Right, next steps. I'm going to get my lunch, take Bronte out, and then I have still a couple hours before I have to go out and do another walk. I did do one this morning. This story is not being told in chronological order. I'm just excited though. I don't care. I don't care if it's confusing. I'm going to get my lunch. I'm going to take Bronte out, and then I'm going to read this copy of Toads and Diamonds. This is a lovely version by Retold by Charlotte Huck. And then, of course, I have this copy of Hans Christian Andersen, and I'm going to read The Snow Queen. But I'll read through that. And I'm rambling again. I don't care. I'm excited. I'll catch you later. This is totally turning into a Comic-Con vlog, but I am just too excited not to share. I am having such a good time, and I don't even have passes. So last night we had dinner in Little Italy with my friend Kelly from The Happy Hobbit. I hadn't had a chance to see her since last Comic-Con when she was in San Diego, so it was really nice to get a chance to catch up just a little bit and meet some of her friends and um, just have a really nice dinner together. And that was lovely. And then this morning, I went down to the San Diego Central Library, and I like riding in the elevator because it's 9 floors of books, and you can just you're going up, 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 and you can see all of the books because the elevator is glass. So I got to the top, and I know that they have some free panels there for educators. And I was looking at my phone to try and find the schedule to see where the panels were and whether or not I had time for any of them. And then this woman comes out and she said something to me, and I didn't really hear what she said. And she said something to someone else, and they're like, yes. So then she just said, like, follow me. And so I just followed her, and she gave us a tour of the rare book collection up at the top of the library, which I guess happens every Saturday at 9:30 for volunteers come and give a tour of the rare books collection. And that was amazing. There was an old copy of a John Keats book. There was the tiniest book in the world and the largest published book in the world, and so many just old, beautiful books. There's a whole collection of Wizard of Oz books, vintage. I am still so excited. And then, since I still had several hours before my next walk, I just decided to explore the library a little bit, and I found a puzzle. And the puzzle just absorbed my time for, I think, a good hour. I had to peel myself away from it. But then I found a copy of Charles Perrault, so I was able to read an older version of the fairy tales Toads and Diamonds, which he calls the fairies. So I got a little bit of research in and continued working on reading The Snow Queen, and was even able to work in some lunch and get some pizza with my partner before I had to come out and do walks. So now I'm at home, I'm taking care of Bronte, and I'm going to head out and do some more walks. And then there will be more. I don't know exactly what we'll get up to tonight, but we'll be exploring downtown in the festive nerd world a little bit more. I love the energy of being down there when everyone is there for con, because it's, I think, like Anthony said this morning, it's a chance when the social minority gets to get together and kind of not be the minority for a day. All the little nerds who always don't fit in go to a place where everything, well, not everything, to a place where they are accepted for all of their nerd fandoms and love of, I don't know, a lot of love of story. Well, yeah, I've got to get going. I just wanted to say that. I did get some writing today. We'll see if this vlog gets cut in half and they have one half that's a little bit of writing plus Comic-Con, and then the other half that's actual writing. We'll see. All right. So I won't tell you the recap of everything we did the last couple days because it would take too long and it's not especially relevant to writing. But we did have a lot of time, gallivant, a lot of time. I'm a little worn out. But we did have a blast gallivanting around town in costume, having dinner with old friends, and having drinks with some friends we don't see as often, and just generally exploring all of the funness that is San Diego during Comic-Con. Probably my favorite part of Comic-Con is getting to see everyone, because everyone really, even seeing like the festive energy of people you don't know is fun. And people will goof around, and there's just more to say than there are in other social gatherings because you're with your people. These are the people who get you. Yeah, everyone comes out for the event, and so you get to see a lot of friends that you don't normally get to see. But I did want to share some of the things I learned from some of the library panels I went to. One of the panels I went to was about, it was called Comics Under Fire, and it was about comic books facing censorship, like very specifically, like in the classroom when people are teachers use comics to teach in the classroom. But I think it's also pretty relevant to pretty much anyone in the book space, with all of the bans that have been going on in schools about particularly books that deal with LGBT, race, or other marginalized identities that people are trying to shove out of schools, and that's not good. And the panel was just kind of on some of the things that you can do about it. I feel like I got a lot out of that. Another one that I went to that I'm actually going to share some of the tips that I learned was about the resources libraries have to support small creators. And I think that's relevant to probably most of you. It's a little bit difficult because different libraries have different programs, and I don't know what region you're in. Um, so, it's hard for me to know how relevant it is to me. But the San Diego library has what they call like a local author gala every year, where if you're a local author, you can apply, and they just have like a kind of like a little bit of a event where all of the local authors who have released books that year can get together and kind of bring each other's friends and fans, to the event and kind of like cross pollinate that way. So it's possible there's something like that at your local library if you wanted to look that up. Another thing that they were talking about, of course, is like author meetups. Your library might already have some author meetups organized, or if you have a writing group, you could ask the library if you can use some of their meeting rooms to meet up. Another resource that sounded pretty amazing that I'd like to check out is that if you have a library card, at some libraries you can use a website called tutor.com for free. It's more or less like a critique site, and it's intended largely for essays and things, but you can submit articles or even pieces of your novel or short stories to be critiqued through the website for free. So that's something very useful if you don't have a lot of betas, or even if you just want, maybe someone who's a stranger, but you don't want to use Fiverr. That's an option that you might want to check out. Or another thing that I want to try that I learned about is that you can log on to your library's website and they called it suggest a purchase. So if your library doesn't have a book that you would like to check out, you can go onto the library system and recommend that they buy a copy of a book. So obviously you can suggest your own titles, or also the titles of other indie authors that you love. So I am going to make some time to get on there and suggest, because I know a lot of very talented writers who write in the indie space, and their books don't necessarily get into the library as easily as from a traditional trad pub book. And you could also donate some of your own copies if you felt inclined to do that, to make it even easier for the library to stock indie books. And in general, the libraries aren't necessarily against indie books, but they do have budget limitations, which means that they have to make decisions about which books they think are going to be wanted the most. And sometimes that will mean that they put more of their budget into trad pub books, just because some of those are more well known. But that doesn't mean that they are averse to taking indie books. particularly if you have an ISBN number. But if your book has an ISBN number, it shouldn't be too difficult to get it into the library. Although they did say that they often keep a book in their catalog temporarily to see if people are actually checking it out. And if no one's checking it out, that they'll kind of cycle it out. Or if people are checking it in and out, then they'll keep it. So um, that's definitely something to keep in mind. But in general, librarians want to make sure people's voices are being heard, and that includes indie authors, especially in relation to the other panel about banning of certain kinds of books. And a lot of times, traditional publishing companies, aren't going to take on certain kinds of stories because of that. So, indie publishing is one way for everyone to be able to tell their story. Something that was very, very specific that one of the panelists suggests is that if you want to get your book into a local library, or if you want to do events at a local library as an author, to create what she called a one sheet. And I'll list off the things she said to include on the one sheet for you. A photo of yourself, the book cover, some reviews, ISBN number, your contact information, and then some suggestions of possible programs that you might want to be involved with, because they said that just an author event, like a "this is my book, come do an event about it," is not necessarily very enticing to their patrons. But if you can do something that's maybe relevant to the research you did to write the book, or something like that, a workshop about something relevant to the book, and suggest that, then that might be something that they would want to go forward with, because their patrons are more likely to be interested in it. They said to submit this one sheet to, if you're writing children's books, the person in charge of the children's programming; if you're writing teen books, the person in charge of teen programming; and if you're writing adult books, the person in charge of adult programming. And I found all of that information incredibly useful, and I am definitely going to be making use of it, but I wanted to share it with you all. And just lastly, there were two things that they suggested to do to support the libraries, which is important right now. Seems like it's important to support pretty much everything right now, because it is. What they said that you could do to support the library is, one, just to sign up for their newsletters to keep informed with things going on in the library, and secondly, to if you have the bandwidth and, quite honestly, the courage. I think it's might be something I would do in the future, but I don't think I would feel brave enough to do it at this point in time. But if you went to like local council meetings, to be able to speak up for the library. But yes, those are some of the things that I was able to learn at the library panels at Comic-Con. So I am actually going to end this vlog here because it's getting quite long. Stay tuned for part 2 of writing heart splatters, or polishing up heart splatters for final publication. And I hope that you are making time for joy and little moments of pleasure in your busy writing schedule. And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to Ink Spills if you enjoy fairy tales, Gothic literature, poetry, book recommendations, or writing.